Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Lori Black. I'm the Associate Director of the Lowell Milken Fund for American Jewish Music here at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. Here is actually just my room, but we're still the UCLA School of Music is still really finding ways to bring everybody together. So um, my position at the Lowell Milken Fund is kind of a dream in that not only do I get to teach and be a part of the faculty at UCLA, but I really get to think about how to represent American Jewish music programming in ways that are different and exciting, and we can get us to think a little bit about what we're learning and what we're doing. And when challenged with what to do for this season, for this year, we as many presenting organizations we said, okay, let's reinvent the stage as best we can. And this first program that we're offering this year, as we're calling it, the album drop, was a product of just wanting to show the amazing contributions that musicians have continued to make, even through the insanity of the last few months, 8 months. And so in thinking about who we first wanted to feature, it was a no-brainer that we would reach out to just such an incredible musician. And so I would like to introduce the subject of our first album drop episode this year. Sir Frank London is a Grammy Award-winning trumpeter, composer, and co-founder of the Klezmatics. His compositions include Freilich's Klezmer Fantasy for Trumpet and Orchestra, 1001 Voices Symphony for a New America, the Yiddish Cuban opera Hatwe Memory of Fire, the poetry, dance, video, music work Salomé Woman of Valor, and more. Besides playing in the Klezmatics, he leads the Glasshouse Orchestra, Frank London's Klezmer Brass Allstars, Shekhinah Big Band, Sharabi with Deep Sing, Ahava Rabbah with Yankee Lemmer and Michael Winograd, and Vilda Mechaya with Eleanor Risa. Frank has worked with the John Zorn, Karen O, Itzhak Perlman, Pink Floyd, LL Cool J, Mel Torme, Lester Bowie, Lamont Young, They Might Be Giants, David Byrne, Jane Siberry, Ben Folds 5, is on over 500 CDs and was featured on Sex and the City. He has published 2 books, Klezmer Trumpet Duets and Patterns for Klez. And I should also point out that he's just a wonderful person, an incredible teacher. I couldn't say enough great things about Frank. So, ladies and gentlemen, Frank London. We all hear the applause.
Yay.
So this originally we were going to jump right into the music, and then Frank really brought up, you brought up some really interesting topics, the idea of what it means to be dropping an album now, what album drop literally means, and then what does it mean to be dropping an album both in the digital age and in the COVID age. And so I just wanted to open it up to you a little bit to tell us what you think it means to be making albums now, to be making, a cohesive work of tracks that all come together and make something, make it greater than the sum of its parts.
I think that's exactly the point, Lori. What makes an album? Because, nowadays, the concept of an album, whether it's a CD or an LP, or back for those of us who are old enough to remember a book about this thick, which was an album of 78s, which the 10 discs of the album would be the complete work. The idea is to present a larger body of work than just a single, than just a song. Whether it's, and that gives the artist, that gives us a chance to present a body of work. And hopefully it's got a theme, a through line. There's a purpose for it to be all together, And so, well, if I can jump right into it, these are weird times here for touring musicians, because we're not touring and we're not playing with other people. So what do we do in this time. So, among other things, I did two things. One, I finished up a big project that I'd been working on with my collaborators for years, but we were all basically too busy to finish it. And that's the Salomé Woman of Valor. So one album that we released and this is all in the last month or so or less, was this a project that, as we talk more about it, is a complete multimedia project, and the music side of it is just one aspect. And then the other thing, the second one is there was a festival every year in Cracow, the Cracow Festival of Jewish Culture. And I was supposed to be giving one of the main stage performances, and the entire festival got canceled and they went virtual. And they asked me if I could figure out a way to give a live concert in New York in a way that was safe, that was broadcast just for them. And we did it, and you'll see excerpts of that tonight. But after we did it, it turned out so well that one of my colleagues said, well, why don't you take the music and think of it as an album? So we took the music from that film, that live concert, and put it together as an album, call it the Rooftop Concert. You'll see why it's the Rooftop Concert. So these two albums that I've released in this period, one is the culmination of a long period of work and is a very complete thematic piece that we'll talk about. And the other one was totally created in and of this moment during them. And it was at a very heightened point in New York. It was in the end of June when we were having the protests and the Black Lives Matters, and everything was just starting to happen. And there was literally, we're on a roof and we're looking over and we're seeing marches in the street. And at that very week, the police had, the mayor had made a curfew, the first curfew I've ever experienced in my life. So we all had to be home by 8 o'clock. So we had to move the entire concert earlier so that it was done. I mean, so two events, one a culmination of a long period of work, and the other a very intense snapshot of a very intense moment, but filled with joy. So those are the two albums that, does everyone know? I mean, you can say, shake your heads yes or no or something, why Laurie calls this an album drop. Laurie, why is it an album drop? Just for the two people who don't know that expression.
Well, an album drop, traditionally, when we had physical albums and what have you, like the release would happen on a certain date, and it's a big moment. I mean, for an album to be released is something really, really exciting. I mean, I feel like I probably got the tail end of that, to like look forward to a new album being released. Now it's always, you know, it's a little less organized in the way it was. It has a little less of the, you know, albums used to always be released on Tuesdays, and that there was not only a regularity to it, but it was an event. And so I thought we can celebrate that now. Now we usually do launch concerts, I feel like, in general. And so this was kind of a different way to look at it.
So normally this would be kind of a listening party, but being what you just said, Laurie, and I totally agree, that nowadays we watch as much as we listen. Why should we buck the trend? Where everything that we're going to play tonight has some visual elements to it, and that'll be part of what we talk about, because that's part of what we do today. And in fact, not the first video, but one of the ones that we'll play, what have I been doing during the pandemic? I actually learned how to make a video. So one of the videos is my first attempt with a friend at making a video. But here we go. Let's start. Let me give the background. Can we jump right into Salomé, Woman of Valor?
Absolutely.
Okay. Perhaps many of you know the story of Salomé. Oh, he's okay. Okay. Why don't you play the video and then we'll talk? Drop it, DJ Black. Full screen.
darkness ensoleil, Salome. Out of the madness, Lila May is night. Drenched with martyred ardor, drown me in the silted stanza, stain sante of sap to spirit, drown me in the surf at waters of hell, of self waters, of swift-full misery, fetid despair, asylum waters, of scorched scream, smashed orbits waters, of moaning filth, sprouts, sip, sprig, thickets, feverish reveries, drowning in the silk seam, curtains, corridor, the moist stone slab, fingers, fleshy revenants, in the waters of roused down, in the waters, the waters.
Hi. So actually that was the one that we made. That video was co-made by myself and my collaborator, and I found myself cracking up. I mean, I think it's actually sort of fun and silly. I hope you got the fun and silly, even though the music and the word content is anything but. But Adeena Karasick, the poet who performed and wrote it and co-made the video, is a professor of media studies at Pratt University, and in fact, Laura, you might appreciate this. Her doctoral dissertation was on Derrida and the Kabbalah. Uh, so, so the but she's kind of obsessed with contemporary media, and she was showing me, hi Lloyd, hey, she was showing me all sorts of contemporary videos of Lady Gaga and the video awards, and I this is not my world, so it's a fun sort of flirting with the ideas of popular culture with music that really isn't exactly popular culture. But here's the story with that project. I'll try to make it somewhat truncated. We created together over a number of years a multimedia live performance piece where my band, which is myself, the great percussionist Deep Singh on tabla, and Dole, which is the Bhangra drum. If you ever hear Bhangra music, he plays all Indian percussion, and the keyboard player Shai Bachar, and who doing all those synthesizer work. The three of us, Dr. Karasick was doing the poetry, and we had two dancers, and we had a lot of video in the background, of which some of the images in our video come from the video for the show made by Elizabeth Mack. And it was, I don't know, many of you know the story of Salome. I think everyone knows, she's the one who danced for King Herod, did this dance of the seven veils, and then asked for him, for King Herod to cut off the head of John the Baptist. So that's the basic story as we all know it or knew it. Turns out, by the way, that story is not exactly the ancient story. She was Jewish. By the way, she was a Jewish princess, descendant of royalty. And the backstory is very Shakespearean, where her mother was married to the previous Herod, and her mother and the brother of her husband conspired to kill her husband. So it's all that. But the story that we know as Salome is actually the story as it was told by Oscar Wilde. And in fact, Oscar Wilde invented the Dance of the Seven Veils. So this is all stuff that I learned in researching Salome. And in the Strauss opera, which bears little, if no resemblance to anything in our piece, he used the Oscar Wilde text. So our idea, Adeena's idea, was to subvert the story and tell it a different way. And my idea, in fact, the entire genesis of the project, I have to say, came from a friend of mine, Jenny Romaine, who some of you may know from her work with Yiddish theater and with puppet theater, who showed me this 1923 silent film of Salome by Charles Bryant, which is an absolutely dreadful film, silent film, but yet every single image in it is strikingly beautiful. And the next video that we'll play is sort of is part of a tradition now, or a methodology that is called found footage. This is a contemporary filmmaking technique where people take footage that exists, whether it's home movies, whether it's strips of film and video that they find in a garbage can, whether it's movies that exist. They don't shoot new movies, but they work with existing footage. Abigail Child took the silent film of Salome and she twisted it around because the images are stunning. And then we put one of the songs and one of the poems from our recording with that. That'll be the next video, just to give you a heads up, Lori. It's called Gardens of Eros. But back to the story. So we started putting it all together, and it was a dance performance because I really loved the idea of using the film as imagery, but not the film itself. At first, I thought maybe I was going to do silent film live music, but the movie's just not good enough. So it was more fun to have live dance, and we had live dancers. And actually, Lila saw it in Vancouver. And it was really fun. And along the way, we were working on the music, and we kept on making the tracks. And I'm basically an old school acoustic musician. I believe in writing out parts, giving it to real people, and playing the music. And you'll see in my next album, on the album drop, that's really where I'm at home. But my two collaborators in Salome, Deep and Shy, they're both 20 years younger than me, and they both really are of a new generation. They were like, no, Frank, we have to use Ableton Live and Max MP. We have to use all these programs. We're going to pre-make tracks. We're going to, use playback and trigger it all from a computer. And I let them take me into the 21st century so that when...
Just to clarify for those who aren't in the know out there, can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by Ableton and that sort of thing?
Sure. So let's assume that you are all in the know when I say put live musicians in a room together with music and 1, 2, 3, go. That we all understand. So everything else, and this is again thank God they taught me this, because everything I learned from them has come in so handy during the pandemic. I've now learned to use these programs, and I'm making music here in this lovely room that I'm only showing you one part of. But so the idea basically is that these are computer programs. We can record ourselves. That's more traditional, go in and record each part. But we have all the different parts we've recorded, and we can actually trigger them. While we're playing live, we're simultaneously playing along. So on what you just heard on that track, there's only 3 musicians, but there's 7 deep sings playing different percussion parts, and there's about 10 Shai Bechars, different keyboard parts, and there's I think 3 or 4 Frank Londons playing different trumpet parts. And when we play it live, so Ableton Live, I don't want to get too technical, but if you're interested, we can. But Ableton is a great program. It syncs with video, so we could always be synced up with the video we were projecting. And it allows you to deal with it. It's almost like if you're mixing an album, but in real time, so we could bring in and out different parts as we were playing live and performing it, it's really actually a lot of fun. But my point is this: when we were finally done with the performance and we'd used this Ableton Live, we had recorded 27 different tracks of the three of us musicians. We had all this material. We recorded Adeena, even though she had performed live in the show. And we said, now let's make it into a good old fashioned album. And which we did. And that one actually came out on CD. It's a physical thing with a beautiful booklet. If you didn't understand half the words she's saying, all the words are printed in the booklet, so the whole, that is a physical object. I still think for both aesthetic and political economic reasons, we should never replace the physical object, because when you download something, whether it's a movie or a thing, your computer can actually take it away from you. You don't have it. You think you own something and you don't. But when I have, which is I think why, without getting into conspiracies, why they took the CD and DVD drives out of your computer. They don't want us to actually own things. They want to own the things. Sorry, I'll stop that. That's a side diatribe. But we wanted Salome to be a physical thing that you can have and you can hold and touch and look at. I'm getting a little off the point. So we had all this stuff and we kept on wanting to finish it, and we were literally too busy because I was on the road 9 months a year. And finally, when this all hit, and we said, well, if there's one thing we can do, we can sit at home and mix a recording. So we did. So really happy to finish it. We just released it to great and lesser aplomb just this last month. And I'd like to play one more song from that before we switch over to the other more acoustic and live album. So this is another cut from Salome, and this is the poem is called Gardens of Eros, and all the visuals are from Charles Bryant's 1923 film, but they're as modulated by found footage artist Abigail Childs. It really takes a village to make art these days. Here you go. So thank you.
I love that tune.
Okay, just a couple little notes, little over all over the place. Just first of all, for the music nerds, and I at first I thought actually I was going to be talking to one of Laura's UCLA music classes, so I prepared the whole musical analysis. And, I'm known mostly for klezmer and Jewish music, and when I play it, I certainly know how to use that inflection, um, but really the scale of that entire composition is actually an Ethiopian scale. It's not a Jewish scale. It's an Ethiopian pentatonic scale, which I've always been fascinated by. So I, you know, and in a funny way, I think one of the main things about this project has been flirting with both indulging in and critiquing the ideas of exoticism, Orientalism, as in Edward Said's book on Orientalism, which I think Lila maybe gave me my first copy of like 20 years ago. I don't know. Does that sound right? And and also and also in a weird way, if anyone remembers back to Susan Sontag's famous essay, Notes on Camp, there's something so campy about the original film itself. The original film Salome is a true gay icon in every way, even though probably no one involved in the actual making of the film was gay. Everything about its aesthetic. It's been shown at gay film festivals, even though it embodies everything that Susan Sontag talks about in her notes on camp. And I, like some other people, have a very ambivalent relationship with camp, have political problems with the objectification of using things as exoticism, and yet there's something attractive about it. And I think this whole piece kind of dealt with that conflict between these things, where we're both embracing it and critiquing it. And so what I talked about the politics, talked about the music. And the other thing I just wanted to say about Adeena's poetry, because it's different. It's a certain school of poetry, different from a lot of other poets. And I think the thing that I most get out of her poetry is that she loves actually the sound of words. Other poets, maybe the meaning is more the point. It's more narrative or something. With her, you find yourself saying the words, and she had one of her books is called amuse bouche, which is a term about in the food world, about little bites of food that amuse your mouth because you taste them and they amuse your mouth. And sometimes, and that's why she called one of her books that, because sometimes saying her words, it's fun in your mouth. And so it's a special kind of poetry. So do we want to say anything, take a breath before we're at the halfway point?
Oh, I just wanted to make mention, other than just if you could, first, if you can tell everybody, where can they find this if they want to listen to the whole album?
Oh, okay. If you want to
watch more of the material.
Okay. So I could even put it in the chat window for everyone. I'll give you the URL. Basically, there's this wonderful thing called Bandcamp, and that's another thing I've discovered. What else am I doing during the pandemic? I'm going to go through all my old collections of stuff that I recorded that I never released on the world, and I can put it all up on Bandcamp. So I'll give you the URL, but this Bandcamp site has both the two CDs that we're focusing on today. If I can't talk, it's because I'm trying to multitask.
No, I encourage everyone, check out Bandcamp. It's an amazing resource. I should say that Frank is just among the many, many amazing musicians that are putting material up on Bandcamp now. And there are specific days when Bandcamp waives any fees that they take, and it all goes to the musicians. So it's worth keeping an eye out for those days.
But there you go. And again, getting back to our first point about what is an album, I'm going to put this up on Bandcamp. You could buy the album, but you can buy any one song itself. So it's a different way of conceiving of things.
Buy the album.
But yeah, buy both, two for the price of one. So okay, so that's that. Let's take a breath and shift gears.
So what I'll just say for a quick minute for anyone that came in after the introductions, thank you all for coming. We just once again to the album drop. If you haven't figured it out already, this is Frank London. And so now if I can just prompt it a little bit, Frank, I think what really excited me about this albums drop, that doesn't sound quite right. I'll work on it. But what really excited me about it is that you had an traditional piece created in a relatively traditional way. I mean, at least in the 20th century, like that's how we make music. We record, we overdub, we do all these things. And now we're going to more traditional music done in a completely atraditional way. At least in my mind. Maybe rooftop concerts are more popular elsewhere, and they should be. So, Frank, if you just want to go ahead and should we start with a track, or do you want to tell us a little bit about it first?
Okay, I was just like answering someone's comment in the chat window. I'm trying.
Not a problem.
Yes,
and
Scott,
yes, I should say, if any of you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we'll either get to them here or we are saving time at the end for questions.
And Scott, yes, I do owe you the duet book. I will get to that. Okay, so let's just say, let me do one more little musical note, which will maybe make a transition. The next songs are all my Klezmer Brass Allstars, which is a fun collection of basically some of my favorite musicians to play klezmer with in New York. And we featured 4 great, wonderful singers, 3 of them being Yiddish singers and 1 being the inimitable Joshua Nelson, who you'll meet in a moment. Really, when I think about tradition and what it means to play traditional music, or what it means for me to do traditional music, and you could say that everything we're about to play on the next album is more traditional than what we heard on the previous album, but I would disagree. It's not about more or less traditional. It's about what tradition we are referencing, and it's just referencing different traditions. And certainly the traditions that I'm referencing on Salome, even though it's got touches of klezmer and Ethiopian and Indian music, it's got a lot of Miles Davis's electric work in it. It's got a lot of the influence of someone who's very near and dear to the UCLA heart. When I did a residency at UCLA with Lori, they took me to the ethnomusicology library where they brought out Don Ellis's trumpet. Don Ellis was a radical trumpet player of the 50s and 60s who died way too young, but who innovated music, mixing Indian music with electronic music, with jazz. And so I would say that the Salome record is in the tradition of Don Ellis. It's just a different tradition. And because it was in that tradition, I got to play by other rules. So now what we're about to present, as I said, my assignment for this, it was from the Cracow Festival of Jewish Culture. They wanted that something that showed New York, that showed that we had life during the pandemic. It was June. We were on a big outdoor rooftop. None of us actually got sick, so it must have worked. We spread out. And what was really weird, it was June, so March, April, May. It was like 4 months that no one had really played music live with anyone else. And what we realized after we did the concert was that there was this incredible energy of people who just were dying to actually just do the thing that we do, which is play music with each other. And luckily, I got my upstairs neighbor, who is a professional videographer, who was out of work because they weren't making any TV shows and movies. So he came with his totally amazing camera, and he did it. And so really ended up with a classic live film. You can still find the entire film online. The album, I just edited out. You'll hear some of the talking introductions in these films. On the album, I just cut it so it's just a series of songs like you would have on a normal album. So this is a live album. It's the exact extreme opposite of the last one in that some of the music we literally, because of the pandemic, we didn't even rehearse. We were up on the roof. At least one song, I won't tell you which one, I taught to the band, and then we played it first time, and that's what you're hearing. So, which is, I'm much more comfortable that way. We can introduce the people and everything, but I'll just say that the 4 guest singers we had were the Prince of Kosher Gospel Music, Mr. Joshua Nelson, Sarah Minna Gordon, the daughter of Adrian Cooper and an amazing writer and singer and third grade teacher and union organizer. She organized the union in a strike, and they just won their action. So she's like growing into, how much more Yiddish can you get than that? Eleanor Risa, my partner on many projects these days, grew up in Brooklyn, daughter of Holocaust survivors, native Yiddish speaker and singer. And the first one, Laura, did I tell you? No, I didn't tell you. Let me give you a second to find it, and then I'll just talk. If you go up to 12 minutes and 5 seconds for Lauren Sklomberg, Lauren and I have been working together for about 35 years in the Klezmatics. We founded together, and we're still doing it. We've also done a lot of projects of Nigunim and Jewish spiritual music. We've done all sorts of things. This is a song that we recorded with the Klezmer Brass Allstars on the Carnival Conspiracy record. And since we didn't subtitle it, I'll give you a little taste of the words. It's so good. The words are Oi Gewalt, and I guess, do I have to translate Oi Gewalt? Or Oh Agony. Oh Agony. Oi Gewalt. Bist du siehst. Oh pain. You are so sweet. And it's a person singing to another person saying, you're as sweet as sugar. I just want to bite you and eat you and chew you. It's a really fun song. So here's Lauren Sklomberg with the Klezmer Brass All-Stars on the roof in the middle of the summer, June 2020.
Hello, Cracow. I'm Lauren Sklomberg. This is Frank Linden and the Klezmer Brass All-Stars. This next song is a song of love. It is the raunchiest song I know, and it says that you are so sweet that you're like a piece of sugar, and if you'd only let me, I would bite you into pieces.
Wenn ich geba kick auf dir, seh ich tausend Sinnen, in wurstet sich in als bei mir, ist leicht durchs Ziege finden. Bis die mit mir ist, mir geht, die ganze Welt ist meine, jede Schuh ist am Minute, wenn ich kick in die Augen deine, bei Tag, bei Nacht, heute tracht dich ein Mammelef in dir, zieh ich es, zieh ich Schloss, euch stehst die Fall, die euch mir. Euch Gewalt bist die siehst wie ein Stück Ziegert, wenn die Wurst mich nur gelost, sie beißt sich dich auf Stücke, weil die bist schön, in die hast rein, in die Augenbräune Farben, die Bäckerlach, die Lippenlach, ihr könnt doch mal mehr Phase starben, neu Gewalt, bis die siehst. Siehst wie ein Stück Ziegert. ich schreie in der Früh, nur ich kann's mich beruhigen, weil keiner kennt mich nicht wie die, heu Mittag ist der Krieg. Ich wusste sonst nicht hin mit sich, hast die kein Chassun, also wie die gefällt mir nicht, mir soll die Welt euch vor. Ein Tag, ein Nacht, heute Nacht, die Tatel in dir, sich es, sich schlaf, euch stehst die Pfadi euch mir. Ich gewahrt, bis die siehst, und siehst wie ein Stück Sieger. Wenn die was mit nur gelost, sie beißen dich auf Stiege. Weil die bist schön, in die hast häng, in die Augenbräune Farben. Die Bäckerle, die Lippele, man kann doch mal mit Falls starben. Neu gewahrt, bis die siehst, wie ein Stück
That's all. Lori, go to 2557, please. So that was Lauren. Can't, there's such joy and energy. It's what's the word? I don't know. You can't hold it down. There's nothing to say. And I was kind of shocked when I saw the film. I was like, oh my gosh. Everyone also just came out rip roaring. And it also cracks me up that the Salome recording happened over months, nearly years to put together. And this whole thing, we recorded the entire album, soup to nuts, in about 3 hours. So, but you know what? That's life. The next person I'm so happy to share with you is Sarah Gordon. And each of the singers did 2 songs in the concert. Actually, Eleanor did 3. They each did a couple of songs. Sarah did one song that she wrote new Yiddish poetry. And so you should check the whole concert out or go to or Bandcamp and pick it up. But I'm going to play for you. Oh, you love the piece, Howard Korman, but what's its name? Oi Gewalt bist disease, oh agony, you are so sweet. The next song that I'm going to play is not Sarah's composition, but is a composition by a wonderful composer of Jewish music named Yontiv Ehrlich, who just passed away a few years ago. And I would venture to guess none of you have ever heard of him, even though he wrote literally thousands of songs. And he is a superstar beyond belief in his community. But if you're not a Satmar Chassid or maybe a member of one or two other sects of Chassidism, you've never heard of him. So he was like the premier songwriter in the Satmar community and in many Hasidic communities. And we love this song. It is so joyful, and the words are kind of so silly. We'll get off silly in a minute, but it's good to stay there. It's called Shabbos in Feld, the Sabbath in the field, Shabbos in the field. And it says basically all the animals are dancing. They're all celebrating Shabbos. Everyone's celebrating Shabbos. And it's just, here you go. Play, please, Lori. Sarah Minna Gordon singing Shabbos in Feld.
A song about Shabbos from the amazing Yontiv Ehrlich, Badchin, across the bridge in Williamsburg, who wrote about Shabbos being for anybody who wants it. It doesn't matter if there's a shul or if there isn't. Even the animals can have Shabbos.
Liebe Jeden, sich will echt erzählen, ihr wird sein zufrieden, sehr schock mit dem, die Meise hat getroffen, will echt so getroffen, sagt es beim Bayrisal, sagt es beim Bashem, sich kleine Lebroche, wir lesen die Aloche, als Gott die Meluche, ob sie beide gut gekannt, die Schäne machen singen, die Wasser machen springen, die Mämmel machen singen, und watschen mit die Hände, oi, 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 freilich Jeden, will taufen sein zufrieden, mit unser Beure, mit sein teure Glück, seine Sache, und mir gläubig, als der Ruhe Neubig, hat gegeben, Feuer, heute zu sich, Zadig im Lach, oi, 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 der Zadig ist am Moll, gegangen, Bauch und Toll, mit Chassidim, mit Talmidim, aber stimmt es so, oi, 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 zum Shabbos auf der Welt, heute mitten im Feld, mit Kabel sein, dem Liebe Shabbos auf der Sinn gestellt, singt danigen, uns ist vergenigen, es kommen zu die Ziegen, sie haben nicht kein Ruhe, die Kälber lacht die Kleine, die Schöpse lacht die Schäne, und jeder gleich noch eine, legen sie sich zu, wir kommen seinen alle, behält er bis auf Kalle, wir sind im Zadig tanzen, behält er sein Gesang, etwas nimmt sie ziehen, und etwas nimmt sie fliehen, etwas nimmt sie fliehen, ich habe lange lang, oi, 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 hey, Kalle, der Shabbos ist für alle, die Schöpse lacht die Ziegen,
favorite rooftop in all of Manhattan. Oh, that's it. Oh, Sarah Gordon, yay! Can I just very briefly, just out of respect, introduce the other people in the band? The drummer is Aaron Alexander. God, if I start telling you about each person, we'll be there forever. Aaron Alexander. The tuba player is Ron Caswell. The guitarist is Brandon Seabrook. The keyboard player is a recent New Yorker, Ilya Schneeves, who is originally from Minsk, and recently he came here. Who else? Matt Dario's playing alto sax, another Klezmatic. Michael Winograd's on clarinet, and Brian Dry, who was until the pandemic hit, playing on Broadway in Hadestown. So it's quite a good band, and as you can, I'm smiling, and I'm actually pretty depressed these days. So that music it's powerful. It's got a lot going on. Hey, Lori, I'm trying to be DJ while talking. Why don't you go up to 252? So okay, so yeah, Shabbos and Feld. So we're going to go back to about the same era as the first song that Lauren sang, the Oi Gewalt bist die Siehst. One of the real joys about working in Yiddish music for me, it's actually a lot like the found footage filmmakers I was talking about with Salome, is that we don't create. I mean, yes, I also write new songs, and Sarah, we write new songs, but the joy in finding things that are already there and getting to reinterpret them, put them in the world, songs that were wonderful 100 years ago, but no one's really heard it probably in 100 years. And we're very fortunate that like Lauren Sklamberg is the current sound archivist at the YIVO Archives, that Jenny Romaine, who I mentioned earlier, who's the one who introduced me to the film Salome, used to be the sound archivist at the YIVO Archives, that our good friend Miriam Chaya Siegel works at the New York Public Library. I mean, I think we have to give a round of applause for archivists and librarians who help us find the material that we can then transform, or sometimes you don't even transform it, you just present it. Because here's another song Eleanor is going to sing, Als Vergelt. I've been having a real problem in my head with how to translate it. It makes so much sense in Yiddish, Als Vergelt. Literally everything for money. But I think in English, if you say, oh, everything for money, you sound like an old Yiddish speaking Jew who doesn't quite know how to speak English. It's not quite that. So I sometimes translate it like, with money you can get anything, but that's too wordy in anything. But the good thing about Eleanor, besides being a great singer and a dozen things, actor, director, choreographer, blah, 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 she's a great storyteller. So even though we don't have subtitles, she'll tell you what this song is all about in English and then sing it in Yiddish. So here's Eleanor Risa, Als Vergelt. Curious times. Please welcome the amazing star of stage and screen, Miss Eleanor Risa. 1, 2, 3, 1.
Shalom Aleichem. It's great to be here. The topic of this song is money. Money, money, money. For money, you can buy information. For money, something small becomes big. For money, the innocent are stuck in prison. For money, murderers are set free. Für Geld kennt ihr kaufen Gewissen. Für Geld jeder Gu nicht wird groß. Für Geld sitzen Menschen in Twiese. Für Geld losten in Meer der Arois. Für Geld sind ihr bei jeder Taille. Für Geld hat euch jeder lieb. Für Geld kennt ihr laufen in Feier. Und für Geld gehst die Gleiche in Glied. Als für Geld, nur für Geld, hab ich alle Mesomen. Als für Geld, nur für Geld, kommen als verkümmert. Es ist keine Sache, Schwerberei, als ihr hat Geld und ihr seid frei. Oi, weh, das ganze Welt hat lieber ein bisschen Geld. Money, money, money. For money, someone ugly becomes beautiful. For money, a fool can become president of a particular nation that borders Canada and South America. For money, someone has enough charm, and for money, you don't have to be any smarter than you already are. For Geld wird von mies schön, for Geld wird man finalisch clean. For Geld tot ihr bei jeder Fein, for Geld tot ihr Seichel geniegt. For Geld ist die größte Koteletten, for Geld ist dein Leben ganz fein. For Geld holt den weiße Karetten, denn for Geld trinkst du besten Wein. Als for Geld, nur for Geld, ob es Salome Woman. Als for Geld, nur for Geld, kann man als verkümmern. Es ist keine Sache, ich schwer bereit, als ihr habt Geld und ihr seid reich. Heute weht das ganze Welt und lieb ein bisschen. Money, money, money. For money, an older woman can buy a young friend. For money, he calls her pussycat mommy. For money, he gives her compliments and kisses her hand and buys her presents. But without money, he sends her straight to Altitschke Dame, kauf ma Junginke Freund. For Geld sucht der Ketzerle Mame, for Geld kischt der Bucher ihr Hand. For Geld kauft der Rieschein Präsenten, for Geld sucht bitte Saat. For Geld dir Komplimenten, und Geld schickt sich als for Geld, nur for Geld, aber Salome Woman. Als for Geld, nur for Geld, kann man als verkümmern. Es ist keine Sache, ich schwer bereit, als ihr habt Geld und ihr seid reich. Oi, weh, das ganze Welt und lieb ein bisschen. Oh, Geld, Geld, aber Salome Woman. Als for Geld, nur for Geld, kann man als verkümmern. Es ist keine Sache, ich schwer bereit, als ihr habt Geld und ihr seid reich. Oi, weh, das ganze Welt und lieb ein bisschen Geld. We're gonna do a song now.
Wow. Mizumin. Mizumin. Is that a word for money? Mizuma? Mizumin? That's a funny word. It's great. It's also great to listen to this with you. I'm actually understanding more of the Yiddish because I'm also understanding the parts that she doesn't translate, which are really, it's fun. Lori, could you go ahead to 3445? I think I saw the estimable Dr. Mark Kligman in the house. And I know that, Lori, you said that, what's the full name? The Milken Archive of American Jewish Music?
Milken Fund for American Jewish Music.
So I would argue that everything that we've heard tonight is in one way or another American Jewish music. But to end this little presentation of these two albums, I think this is about as American Jewish music and about as Jewish and American as it can get. Joshua Nelson calls himself many things. He calls himself the Prince of Kosher Gospel. And what that means, kosher gospel, is basically he's a gospel singer who doesn't say the J word. And so he just wipes the J word out of it, and it's kosher gospel. You all know the J word, right? Okay. Yes, JC? No. What would JC say? He doesn't sing about Jesus, so it's everything else. And he says, maybe I forget if I left the introduction in, so forgive me if this is redundant, if he says the same thing, but that he wrote this next song when he was teaching kids in religious school in his neighborhood, and they would be like losing attention, the little kids. So he thought that it was better to use song than just try to teach them the lessons. And I love this. I just wish that when I was growing up on Long Island in my Reformed synagogue, my Reformed temple, that I had someone like Joshua singing music. Like, this is his composition, his words and music. And it's called I Want to Be an Observant Jew. And it's got some of if you love predictable rhymes where you kind of know where the end of the line is going before you get there, here you go. What rhymes with Jew? Take it, Joshua.
Be a more observant Jew. I want to pray to God and hear through and sing the song of Zion. And I don't want to be moaning or crying. I want to dance the Torah. Sit down with my rabbi and study the Torah. Yeah, yeah. Today, tomorrow, and the world will come. A day of peace for everyone. Urge you to study my traditions. Yeah, and learn my religion. Where to fill in on my head and pray. Light the candles for Shabbos day. Oh, I look to the east, praise and peace. He's run the world and the Middle East. Yeah, yeah. Today, tomorrow, and the world will come. A day of peace for everyone. I want to be a more observant Jew. I want the devil to Hashem me. Sing the songs of Zion. And I don't want to be moaning or crying. I want to dance the whole night. Sit down with the rabbi and study the Torah. Today, tomorrow, and the world will come. A day of peace for everyone. Urge you to study my traditions and learn my religion. Where to fill in on my head and hand to pray. Lighting those candles for Shabbos day. I look to the east and pray for peace. Israel, the world, and the Middle East. Today, tomorrow, and the world will come. A day of peace for everyone. messianic age. We are all children of different paths, so come together, together in life. Jews, Christian, Buddhists, Hindu, Muslim, everyone, for the sailing hall and the eastern side. Today, tomorrow, and the world to come. A day of peace for everyone. I'm born to be a Mohawk, Jew. I'm on the diamond Hashem and sing the song of higher. And I wanna be more than a kite. I wanna dance the horror. Sit down with my rabbi and study the Torah. Yeah. Today, tomorrow, and the world to come. A day of peace for every
Thank you. All right. So yeah, as I said, there was a lot of energy. There was a lot of energy on that rooftop that day. A lot of pent up emotions, and channeled in the best of ways. I'd like to really thank Lori and Mark and all of you for coming. And this is a wonderful way to spend an afternoon for you on the West Coast and an evening for me on the East Coast. And hope you enjoy these two very different albums that both dropped in the last few months. And, you know, if this pandemic continues, then I got time to make a couple more. So just keep your eye out for them. I don't know.
We hope you'll make a couple more either way.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you mind taking a few questions from the crowd here?
That's why we're here.
All right, so feel free to drop them into the chat, or I mean, there's few enough here. If someone wants to jump in and unmute yourself, love to open it up to some questions.
Do you mind? Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi. I was interested in what you said about the one track on the Salome album, sort of the conflict between the exoticism, sort of critiquing that and indulging in it somewhat, because I feel like that's something that's like a line that I've felt like we've seen read in a lot of progressive Jewish music in the past like decades, whether that's like with like John Zorn, or sort of how Klezmer, Balkan, and Romani traditions have mixed a lot in recent times. I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about sort of how you resolve that contradiction or conflict.
Yeah, good question. First of all, I don't think I resolve it. I think I explore it, honestly. And most of the time I don't know. It's really complicated, and we live in a very interesting time for these kind of things now, because on one hand, there's much more discussion about these things than there used to be, as well there should be, and critique of them. But on the other hand, sometimes the critique misses the point. Okay, personally, as I said, when I started discussing that, I remember reading Susan Sontag's notes on camp, or Edward Said's Orientalism. So I think the first thing for people like me, this is just me, this is not other people, having a philosophical foundation to discuss it is important. Having a dialectic approach to being able to critique something is very important. And that's, although I could see the opposite of this, but that's separate from what one makes. it's really hard because I often I had this discussion just the other day, talking about the person whose name is on the UCLA music department, Mickey Katz. I don't know if his name is on the department. I forget what it is, but if you know the music of Mickey Katz, first of all, he started out playing in the band of Oh Come On Brain, the great musical comedian. You'll remind me. Someone will remind me in a second. But Mickey Katz was a native Yiddish speaker who did parody songs of American popular songs, half in Yiddish, half in English, with Klezmer, but with and I mean, when you get. I know I'm not being articulate because you asked a really good question. Here's the thing. Here's how I resolve it. I'm aware that we're on very, very sensitive material whenever we go to this place. And I never deny that. Oh, Spike Jones, thank you. Thank you, Lloyd. Yeah, so he played in Spike Jones' band. And if you want to have some fun, just Google on or YouTube Spike Jones and Mickey Katz videos to see absolute musical lunacy of the highest order. So, I'll say a couple of things how I resolve it now that I'm on track. First of all, whatever you do, try to do it really well. I swear to God. So, like, lots of people, for example, have mixed Yiddish songs and Latin songs. This is a big thing. It goes back literally almost 100 years. But when you listen to something like Raisins and Almonds Cha Cha Cha, it is so campy, it is so kitschy, and yet the arrangements are so good and the musicianship is at such a high level when you watch Spike Jones. So if you're going to do it really at the top. And like that film, that 1923 film, I mean, I hope you agree with me, the imagery, I mean, there's like dwarves with feet on their head. I mean, it's insanity. If you're going to do it, embrace it fully. That's part of it. And really, I believe you have to know, one has to have one's own standard if you're doing something that is offensive to a culture, to a people, and really be scrupulous and be aware of it and be thoughtful and be willing to talk about it, be willing to take critique, but don't be afraid to think about it. Don't walk away from it, but don't just embrace it thoughtlessly. If there's something I hate, it's someone who says something or does something offensive and then they go, "Oh, it was just a joke." I hate that. That's not an excuse. It's never an excuse. But someone says, "Oh, you can't do that. You're not this, so you can't do that." It's like, wait a second. Can we really look at what's going on here? So be conscious, listen to people's things, but have your own moral standards and have a good wall of people more intelligent than I am or you are to back you up. Say, well, Edward Said said blah 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 blah. It's I don't know if that helped at all. It's a big subject, but I got to say, sometimes I hate things that are kitschy, but sometimes you got to love it. I don't know. It's
nothing wrong with a little kitsch.
Well,
We have another question from Sharon Miller.
Hi there. First of all, wonderful.
Hold on,
program.
Sharon. You said you wrote David Crockett, but it's David Crockett.
David Crockett.
It's David Crockett. He spelled it with the U. I'm just saying. Sorry, go on.
So I sing with a Klezmer band here in Toronto called Klez Connection. I'd like to know where I can get hold of the music to these wonderful songs that we heard, especially the ones from the two women.
It's funny. I saw you wrote that in the chat, and I started writing an answer, and then I stopped in the middle. Okay, so when I want to be a real I don't know what polite word to use. provocative. How's that? I was going to use a worse word that I say, well, do what I did. Listen to it and transcribe it and learn it from the recording. But here's the thing. Nowadays, the internet is your friend. There is so much material out there. So you just, I get a little pissed at people who ask me to give them things, when it's out there, you can find it. When we did the Carnegie Hall Yiddish concert, and there was a great. In any case, you go on the libraries and the New York Public Library, and you go archive. You do the research; it's there. Some of it is, depending on what songs. You can an easy answer. Here's an easy answer: get all 4 volumes of the books by the Mlatek by Chana Mlatek. The Pearls of Yiddish Songs, the Gems of Yiddish Song. What is it? There's the Mir Trogene Gesang. There's enough songs in those 4 volumes that
I can
you never have to look
here.
at. Yeah, but because I also like to be unique, I try not to take the songs that are in those 4 volumes because I want to, stake out some new territory. So, but what we just spend hours in archives. We really, it's a lot of research, but for me, that's part of the fun. And you find these songs, and there's a joy. Really, YouTube is your friend. I use it. There's a woman. I shouldn't say this. You might be one of our guests here today. I don't love her singing, but she has unbelievably good taste, and she picks these songs, and one after another, I'm like, these are great songs. And she often has the words there, so I don't have to transcribe the words. I'm better at transcribing music than transcribing words. So just listen and go. And here's another one. On YouTube, did you know you can hit a little button and you can slow down the speed without changing the pitch? It's under does everyone know how you do that? You'll find it on YouTube if I had a YouTube window open, and so you can really learn music. Yeah, it's the playback setting, Scott says, but it's under something. It's under settings or something. There's a little widget on the bottom, and you click it. And one thing is you can change the speed. So you find a song. I was just doing that today, actually, with a John Coltrane song that I didn't know, and I was trying to transcribe it, so I started playing it at half speed. So,
Yeah, I had to do that when I had to transcribe a Miles Davis solo.
Exactly.
In university.
Exactly. Yeah, except that when I was young, we did it by slowing down the tape, but then it slowed down. And so Miles Davis is playing. So now they can slow down the speed without slowing down the pitch.
That's right.
Sorry, I don't have a better answer. Check the Mlatek books. You'll love them.
So we're approaching that time. So I just want to go ahead and take this opportunity to say another thank you to Frank. This has just been an amazing session. I think not only have we learned about the albums, but we learned so much about how you work, how you creatively come up with something and see it from the beginning of a project to the end of a project, which is so cool. It's been really enlightening. I just want to reiterate that this has been a program offered by the Lowell Milken Fund for American Jewish Music at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. And we received additional support for all of our Klezmer activities from the David Victor Foundation and our incredible friend, Fran Feynman, who comes to just about everything and has really helped support these programs. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more programs like this, join our mailing list, follow us online. We have a whole bunch of programs coming up this year. This is one of several album drops, in addition to several other series that we're doing. Our next program is December 1st. We are doing a masterclass open to the public with David Amram, an incredible composer of both jazz and Western art music. And we would just love to see you all join us again. So thank you all so much. And my little thing, I would love it if, feel free at this point to unmute yourselves and give a real round of applause, because we've gotten to the point where all we see are the yellow hands. So a real thank you to Frank for a wonderful program.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Artsik and Shannon Dunk.
David Amram, huh?
Yeah, December 1st.
How old is he? 81?
He will be turning 90 in 1 week.
Next week he'll be 90.
And he'll be 90.
He's fabulous. He's fabulous.
He's
so please join us.
What a history that. What are you doing with him? I'm just so curious. What are you doing with David?
We have a series called the Jewish Music Masterclass, and he's kicking it off. It's essentially kind of an opportunity for composers to highlight a few works throughout their discography that illustrate their Jewish identity.
So what is the most Jewish of David Amram's recordings?
He's recorded several works. I believe he did a sacred service.
Yes, he did. You're absolutely right. That's true.
Mark, if you can jump in, I know there's a few others, but that's the one that's coming to my head.
He wrote a symphony, something called Spirit of the Soul, which is really based upon some Ethiopian and Yemenite chants. Really, really, really wonderful music.
Oh, his history makes mine pale in comparison, and I've had a lot of fun. So he's got an
amazing story. But you have an amazing story too, Frank, and we love you.